reason we leave behind another story that's got me blind. Got only you on my mind. I couldn't face what I couldn't find.
Wait, back up, 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 Cookie! Hello, Blind Horse Project patrons, and welcome back. I needed to add a quick note in here before we get to this week's instructional video. Currently in the area of Minnesota I am in, we are experiencing a crazy cold snap. So to teach this week's lesson, I am reusing old clips of the work I have done with various blind horses in the past. When the cold snap ends, Blink, Jay, and I will create new videos from scratch for the topics to come. But for today, we take a more in-depth look at voice commands. That is, how to help your horse understand them, why they are used, and give you different tips for the everyday training of your blind horse. Without further ado, let's get into it. So, why do we need to use vocal cues with our blind horses? Why not just use touch and feel to guide them around? There are a few different reasons for this. One, using our voice regularly around our blind horses helps let them know where we are at all times before they run into something physical. As many of us know, horses are flight animals, and when they go through a transition as big as going blind, they tend to go back to their main instincts a little more, at least at first, and can be far more easily startled. Creating a space within your blind horse's training for vocal cues allows you to be more safe and allows your horse to make some sense of the environment while they are with you for this new journey of horsemanship. Number 2, groundwork is crucial for the full rehabilitation of your blind horse, and using vocal cues inevitably helps structure it better for you and your horses. Groundwork in horse training is generally far too underused in the horse industry, and the general fad among many training barns and private owners is to cut corners just to get the horse going. And as a result, many horses don't receive the full foundation they deserve, and then it becomes the horse's responsibility to fill in the gaps of understanding, including how to balance under the rider and under themselves properly. Blind horses force us to become better horsemen and women because the shortcuts that we can take with sighted horses we can't take with blind ones. For instance, you cannot afford a blow-up to allow the horse to buck it out because your blind horse will either run into a fence or more likely trip and fall because they don't know where their feet are yet. What's left is bringing true and full understanding, trust, and willingness into the relationship between horse and owner, taking the time it takes to teach your horse how to balance properly, first with themselves and then with the rider, slowly. And that in and of itself is a test of character for the human. Can you sacrifice your desires and put your horse first? My personal opinion is that helping our horses get through something as challenging as blindness is our responsibility after all they give. But bringing it back, our horses are much more intelligent than most realize. Vocal cues, once understood and clearly taught, help the horse differentiate what is going to happen before a follow-up cue is given, as well as to warn when they are getting too close to the handler on the ground during lunging, or to vocally correct before having to follow up if they make a poor choice. Believe it or not, once they get confident, a lot of them get sassy. When they do get sassy, they can't see our faces or our body language to tell them that their behavior is either acceptable or not, so vocal cues fill in the blanks. To clarify, I think the majority of sassy behavior is playful, but our horses don't always know their own size. So steering them into the correct guidelines of play alongside humans is important for our safety. Sometimes sassy behavior is akin to a temper tantrum, but rarely is it helpful to correct a horse having a temper tantrum. Usually their temper tantrums are due to a lack of understanding, so correction by smacking is absolutely not appropriate. Number 3. Vocal cues, once taught on the ground appropriately, transfer immediately to saddle work, so the horse already has a cue that they are familiar with, and in my experience makes the start or restart under saddle a lot safer. In my experience, the main stacked trigger that causes a blow up in the horse when being started or restarted under saddle is the horse not understanding quite yet the cues of the seat and leg, or they're getting a refresher of them. If they are nervous when you first get on, Having pressure added to understand a seat and leg cue to go forward tends to cause a trigger stacking effect, which in explanation is the effect of a glass that is finally overfilled. The glass, or in this case the horse, can handle a certain level of stressors, that is fillers, until the glass finally overflows and the horse blows up. There are certain exercises we can do by adding pressure in the area where the rider's leg is from the ground, but in the end, having our legs resting around either side of their rib cage is an experience that can't be fully replicated unless you have a really good rider dummy. The goal, of course, is to have a happy and calm horse throughout the entire process, but every single human will make error to some sort of degree eventually. The vocal cues take away the need for the horse to immediately figure out what our leg and seat cues mean when they are already trying to adjust to the feel of the rider. Also, in my training blueprint for these guys, I use a lot of positive reinforcement to clarify when the horse is doing things right. What this actually does is connect a sound to the horse's brain, releasing endorphins, and thus the sound triggers the endorphins, which also helps calm the horse and get cortisol and adrenaline out of the conversation. So overall, adding vocal cues as a main staple from the ground really is key to having a quiet restart or start under saddle with your blind horse. So how do vocal cues work, and how do we teach them? And as usual, to use this concept in your horsemanship, you have to understand the different pieces that make this work. First, we have to know that vocal cues work by association. The horse understands what the cue is based of, what you associate it with, and the tone matters too. This is based on the basic learning structure that nearly all living creatures use. If your horse has a good experience with you when they spend time with you, they'll aim to meet you at the gate next time. If they have a bad experience, like getting chased by a dog when they go to a certain area, they will likely try to avoid that area in the future. Likewise, I also try to help the horse associate finding the right answer to my cues a rewarding experience. And the simplest way to do that is to use treats appropriately because our horses are generally motivated by food. If your horse is not interested in food, you can use scratches in their itchy spots or simply give them space because horses value peace too. So the basic structure when teaching or refreshing your horse's cues would look something like this. You give the vocal cue to your horse to walk, then clarify after a couple of seconds by leading the horse forward. When the horse walks forward, you give the vocal cue that means reward, and then you offer the treat, scratch, or leave them alone. The reason there needs to be a reward cue is because we can't always physically get to the reward fast enough for the horse to properly associate what they did with the reward we are giving. Even scratches sometimes come too late. So it makes sense that the very first vocal cue that should be taught to the horse should be the reward cue. Some people like to use a clicker, some people like the word good or yes, whatever you use, keep it consistent, especially if you are using your voice. For instance, if the cue is high, like yes, you can't, in the beginning stages at least, change the tone to yes, and then expect the horse to understand. For teaching the reward cue, the reward should come immediately after giving the vocal cue, so the horse starts picking that cue up apart from all the rest of our human gibberish. If you watch this clip closely, you can see me using the basic positive association strategy to ensure Daisy's first weight experiences under saddle are good ones. The regular vocal cues we use to move our horse around when we first start working with our horses needs to be spaced a couple of seconds out from our clarification cues, which are the physical touch, in order for the horse to understand that the new vocal cue meant anything. Then you follow up with the reward cue once the horse does what you offer as per usual, quickly. For instance, one of the first assignments for owners joined to this Patreon will be to teach their horse to back up responding to the vocal cue before they have to follow up with the physical clarification cue. Patrons will be guided to choose their vocal cue for the backup along with the tone, and then be shown how to use a physical cue to clarify. Once the horse responds, in the beginning, the reward cue comes quickly. As the horse starts to understand, over the course of several sessions, the handler goes from rewarding for 1 step to rewarding 10 steps backwards, to then rewarding 10 steps backwards with a little bit of effort. And that, dear patrons, is the introductory video to vocal cues. Tune in to next week's instructional video to see the reward cue and the backup exemplified with 2 different blind horses. Thanks for watching!